This next talk is sponsored by Wiz. Wiz transforms cloud security for customers, including 40% of the Fortune 100, enabling a new operating model. With Wiz, organizations can democratize security across the development lifecycle, empowering them to build fast and securely. It's cloud-native application protection platform that drives visibility, risk prioritization, and business agility, and is #1 based on customer reviews. Next speakers are Felipe and Lucas. The title is The Oracle Awakens, Demystifying Privilege Escalation in the Cloud. Let's hear it for them.
Well, thank you guys for coming. So, my name is Felipe Espósito. I'm the head of security research at Tenchi Security. That's a startup focused on cloud security and third-party risk cyber management. And these are my social, the QR code. So,
I'm Lucas. I also work at Tenchi under Proteus in the research team. I'm also a master's student at Universidade de São Paulo, and obviously a Pokemon expert.
So, our agenda for today is we are talking about our motivation, why we try to research about privilege escalation in Oracle, what is exactly privilege escalation, how the Oracle IAM works, and if you don't know anything about Oracle, just take this 101 and perhaps in a week or so you'll be able to do a security expert in Oracle certification. It's kind of basics. You only have to learn about other security features, security products they have inside their own cloud, but it's going to be easy for you guys. And we're also going to talk about the paths to be the chosen one, or AKA to become the administrator, and some conclusions at the end. So, first of all, why did we thought about researching about Oracle security, right? So, we already know that you have 6 years ago, Spencer released privilege escalation techniques for AWS. There's a bunch of calls for privilege escalation in GCP and Azure, but there were none, at least that as far as we know, privilege escalation techniques for Oracle Cloud. So we are thinking there might be some, right? Why not? So we are researchers, so we are curious by default. So we thought, well, might be a good research topic, would help improve the security of our customers at Tenchi, and most important, it looked cool, right? So there's an XKCD comics strip here that basically about curiosity and how kill mathematicians and physicians and this kind of stuff, basically by asking them questions and making them wonder about their life while crossing the roads. So, yeah. What exactly is privilege escalation, what we are trying to accomplish here? So this is a Wikipedia definition about privilege escalation, but it's basically explore a bug, a design flaw, or a misconfiguration in any cloud provider or configuration that might help you to get more privileges that you already had before. When we are talking about cloud, we are talking about actions that you can do against the control plane. So you can leverage some kind of actions, some kind of misconfiguration, and get access to and permissions to do a little bit more actions. In our cases, when we talk about cloud, basically it falls under the last two categories, design flaws and configurations, right? So, Oracle AAM 101, how does this work? In Oracle, in almost all cloud providers, you have users. And when you have users, a bunch of users, you can group them as a group. And after this, you have one thing that we call in Oracle, it's called identity domain, is where the users get authentication, right? And in Oracle, you also have one thing they call compartments, and this can be related to projects on GCP or new accounts on AWS or even resource groups on Azure. And compartments are basically logically separated pieces of cloud that you can put a project or two projects or compartments inside compartments. You can do this kind of stuff. And above that, you have your own account. It's called tenancy. And that's how Oracle works. And to coordinate all of this, you have the policies. So you can write policies for groups, for identity domains, for compartments, for specific compartments, and for your tenancy. And those policies are basically what does the authorization in Oracle Cloud. So we had to take a look at policies, right, to understand how it works. And Oracle uses a kind of natural language approach to IAM policies. So it's pretty easy to understand what's going on here. So the overall syntax of this policy, the statements is like allow, and there is always allow. The deny is by default. An identity domain and a subject might be a group, a user, or a OCID. That's the similar arm to the Oracle. A verb, and that can be an action he's going to use in a resource type. In a location, might be regions and this kind of stuff. And you have to put some, you don't necessarily have to, but you can use some conditions to narrow down what you're going to do. So in general, it makes really, really easy for us humans to understand, but it's kind of hard for parsing in computers how to analyze this. And to make things worse for us trying to write programming computers to fix this, there's also some advanced statements. Like you can define variables, like define group as another stuff, and then you can use this another stuff as a group just to make things a little bit more complicated, right? So this is basically how the Oracle IAM policies works. But we don't finish it yet. We have to talk about the 4 permissions level that we have in Oracle. So basically, the verb here, you have the permissions and the verb, and we have 4 kind of levels. The inspect, they're only allows you to read metadata from those services or things that you want to touch. The read, that allows you to get, for instance, and you have a storage, similar a bucket in S3. The inspect allows you only to read the metadata. The read allows you to get the object inside of the bucket. You also have the use, its ability to use, create new resources on that thing. And the manage is the ability to manage that resource, create new resources and things like this. So each one of those levels, like the manager, has the use, the read, and inspect. The read has only read and inspect. Inspect is the lowest level that you can get. And this is how permissions are taken in Oracle, right? So you might be thinking, how does Oracle knows if you spin an instance, which permissions that instance will have? So they create a thing that they call dynamic groups. So you can create a dynamic group, give permissions to that group, and you say, like, every instance with the tag project A will have these permissions here. And every time you spin an instance with the tag A, it's automatically be added to that group, and you'll have that permissions to run whatever that policy has, right? So this is a pretty clever way to do it. And you can think this as like instance profiles in AWS. So, now that you guys know about Oracle AAM, we want to talk about paths to be the one, paths to gain privilege escalation on Oracle Cloud. And for this, I don't know if you guys noticed, but we tamed all our detection, our privilege escalation techniques by names of the matrix on the Oracle in the matrix movie said. So we have some paths to be the one. The first path, there's actually four kinds to way to get privilege escalation on Oracle and every cloud provider as well. But the first one is going to be exploit a privileged resource, steal or use their credential by somehow. The other two are basically with your current privileges that you already have, grant yourself more privileges. Like if you are in AWS Word, would be have permissions like attach user policy, then you can attach yourself an administrator policy. The other one would be grant resources policies, and then you can use that resource or impersonate that resource. And the last one would be exploit flaws in IAM systems from Oracle, but no flaws have been found yet. So this is out of our question by now. So, all right, so exploit privileged resources. There are three main possibilities here. So the first one would be steal credentials for any computing instance that is using that has a flaw like SSRF, server-side request forgery. The second one would be steal the credentials for a computing instance with remote code execution, and they differ a little bit. We're gonna see this later. And the third technique would be if you already had the access to run any command in an instance with higher privileges. So the first one we call "you got the gift." It's a phrase that Oracle says in the Matrix movie. And basically, you have an SSH key to run anything on any instance that you have on that account. But if one of those instances have more privilege than you can just log in on that instance and run any command that you want to run. So be careful when you do this kind of stuff. It's kind of tricky to detect, but you can do it pretty easily. So try to take care of SSH keys. The other techniques that we developed was called cookies need love. And if you figured out instance that has a RCE, you can just execute a command injection or any kind of remote code execution in that instance. And then if you needed to, you can run commands direct as that instance. By doing this, basically you just have to run this command over here, like OCI, the command that you want, and then / auth instance principal, and this will run as the instance that you're running on. And the third one, before we talk about the third one, we have to talk about the OCI instance metadata. And the OCI instance metadata works pretty much exactly as AWS instance metadata. So the main problem with Oracle is that they run the MDS v1 as default, so shame on you, Oracle. But and the SV2 is also protected against server-side request forgery, right? So this is what you got when you call it OCI metadata. You can get a lot of juicy stuff from the instance that you're running. And the third technique about this is we call it take a cookie. That was first described by Orca Security in a blog post that is linked here. But you can steal the instance certificating using SSRF and then use them as if you were you, right? So those are the techniques, the first three techniques that we developed. So my friend Lucas is going to talk about the last techniques that we developed.
Hi guys. So talking about the remaining privilege escalation methods. So there are also, let's say, flaws that let you grant yourself more privileges depending on the privileges you have, okay? So first thing of all, if you have both use groups and use users privileges, you can modify groups, okay? You can add or remove members from groups. But the thing is, as Felipe explained, privileges in Oracle are defined by which group you belong to. So you can just add yourself to a group with higher privileges, so you get more privileges. This is not entirely original. There is an item about this in the CIS benchmark for Oracle, but they say something like, be aware of users that can modify the administrators group, which is by default the most privileged group in Oracle. However, there may be other privileged groups, all right, as long as they have more privileges than you. And we've tested this also recently, and it seems like the administrator group has some additional privilege requirements. It's a little more protected, okay? So if you have these two permissions, you can grant yourself any permission as long as any group in your compartment or tenant has those permissions, okay? And another simple trick, if you have the manage users permission, so it's a step up for users, right? Before it was use users, now it's manage users. Then you can create API keys for any user in your tenant, okay? So you can basically assume their identity, all right? So what you do is you go into their page, you can use the API or the UI, and then you create a key. Oracle will give you this information. Then you open up your favorite shell. You have to configure a profile using this data, all right? And this is a little tricky. If anyone wants to try, please use this as a reference because it's not that trivial. You have to configure the profile, and then every time you call a command, you have to append this full string, like minus of API underline key, yada, 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 okay? This is also a little tricky. This is not like in the documentation. We had to dig around to find this. But this works. So these are just two methods where you can grant yourself more privileges as long as you have enough privileges to do so, okay? And lastly, there are also two kinds of methods here where you create a privileged resource or you give more access to a resource that you have access to, and then you run commands through that resource, okay? So we're talking about instances, basically. So dynamic groups can have two inclusion criteria, okay? You can either add instances by their ID, so you're adding one instance at a time, or you can use the compartment ID. So you say like, all the instances in this compartment, which is like a project in AWS or GCP, will belong to this dynamic group, okay? If that dynamic group has some greater privileges than the ones you have currently, and if you have enough permissions to create a new instance, okay, so yes, the stars must align, then you can create a new instance that will fall into that compartment, or, you know, it will fall into that dynamic group, and then you can log into the instance. It will already have all the permissions you want, and then you can run commands from there, okay? So why are we creating a new instance? So in Oracle, instances are like pretty raw, I would say. So if you want to change the SSH keys for an instance, you kind of have to like log inside them and edit the SSH file manually. It's not like AWS or GCP where you can do that from the UI. So it's better if you just create a new instance and get its SSH key when you are creating it, okay? But yes, there are methods to change the SSH key for an existing instance. You could also do that, but it's way harder, okay? After you create the instance, you just gotta SSH into it. You gotta download and install the Oracle CLI, and then you can run commands, any commands you want, as long as you append that last little bit, minus of instance principal. So what that does is it instructs the Oracle CLI to use the instance's credentials to run commands, okay? By default, instances have no privilege whatsoever. They have to be in a dynamic group. So again, this only works if the stars are aligned. And finally, if you have access to an instance and you have the use dynamic groups privileges, then you can modify an existing dynamic group, okay, to include some instance you have access to, right? Maybe you can't create any new instances, but you have the SSH key to an instance. There is a highly privileged dynamic group somewhere. The instance is not in that group, but you have this privilege, then you can insert the instance into that group, and then you can get higher privileges and run commands from that instance, okay? So just to conclude, we're running short on time. Most methods depend on IAM, okay? So ensure you're managing your accesses and privileges correctly. This is hard in Oracle because they have this natural language approach. It's very easy to read and to write policies as a human, but to like parse them and to transform it into like some usable data format you can do nice queries with, you're gonna have to like use a natural language parser. pretty hellish. Some methods are not so obvious, as you've seen. So be careful when messing with groups, dynamic groups and instances, things like that. They can get tricky. And OCI's default permissions are pretty secure. By default, things have no permissions. It's pretty okay, so you have to rely on someone making a mistake if you're a pen tester, okay? Or you have to rely on your developers not making mistakes if you're on the blue team. That's it. Questions?
For those techniques where it's using use user, use group, and things like that, what is the Oracle guidance to defend against that, to prevent that sort of like add yourself to another group or privileged escalation? Is it that they advise you to deny those users from being added to the group as an explicit policy of the group, or is it something else?
So like you're asking about how can we prevent users from adding themselves to another groups? Okay. Yeah, so basically the main guidance is only administrators and IAM administrators should have the permission to manage groups, like, yes. As far as I know, there's not any second layer of defense you can have here. It's really just minimize this privilege to as few people as you can. And yeah.
Other questions? One more round of applause for speakers.
Thank you.